3 words changed everything. Bitter old woman. That's how my daughter described me in a voice message she accidentally sent to my phone. In that message, I learned she was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, steal my house, and dump me in the cheapest nursing home she could find. She thought I was a helpless old lady. She was about to learn otherwise. My name is Beatrice Hayes. I'm 67 years old, and I always believed the greatest thing I ever built was my family. But a single, accidental voice message from my own daughter taught me that the foundations you trust the most can be the first to crumble. What I heard that day made me pack a bag the very next morning, armed with a plan she would never see coming. It was a Tuesday. Just a normal, quiet Tuesday. The kind of day you forget as soon as it's over. I saw my daughter's name, Judith, flash on my phone screen. A little warmth spread through my chest. Maybe she was calling to see if I needed anything from the store. That's what I told myself, anyway. A mother's love is unconditional. But I was about to learn that a daughter's patience has a price. I picked up the phone and played the voice message. My smile slowly faded, replaced by confusion, then horror. Judith's voice came through, tinny from the phone speaker. Walter, I swear I can't take having my mother in this house for one more second. She's a constant nuisance. Always hovering, always asking questions. It's suffocating. The floor felt like it had dissolved beneath me. This was my Judith, the same daughter for whom I had worked until my fingers were raw, cleaning the houses of people who had everything. The same child for whom I sold my own mother's wedding ring to pay for her college textbooks. The same woman who sobbed in my arms when her first fiancé, Richard, left her standing at the altar, and I spent my last $5,000 in savings to help her get back on her feet. But the message wasn't over. The coldest part was yet to come. And the money, we're bleeding cash on her. I've been looking into some of those cheaper homes out past the county line. Found one, just $900 a month. Think about it, Walter. That's an extra $1,000 a month for us. $900. Was that my worth? My hand trembled, nearly dropping the phone. Also, I got the paperwork from Gloria. She says since we have Mom's power of attorney for her health, we can use the doctor's notes about her confusion to get control of the estate. The house is in her name, but Gloria found a loophole. A few signatures, a cooperative judge she knows, and the house becomes ours. She won't even know what happened until she's unpacking her things at Golden Meadows retirement home. My house, the only thing of value I owned. The house I had bought with a down payment earned over 10 years of 12-hour days. The walls that had seen Judith take her first steps, the backyard where we'd held her sweet 16 party. My own daughter, and her cousin Gloria, who I'd bounced on my knee, were plotting to steal it all from under me. But the final blow, the one that shattered my heart into a million pieces, was the sound that came next. Her laugh. A light, cruel laugh filled my kitchen. In a month, Walter, Mom will have a new, cozy little room, and we'll have a $500,000 asset. We can finally live. No more bitter old woman judging our every move. Can you imagine the peace? In that moment, she wasn't my daughter. She was a stranger who wore her face. If you have ever felt the soul-crushing betrayal of being utterly disposable to someone you love with every fiber of your being, you know the chilling silence that filled my kitchen. But what my daughter Judith didn't understand is that her mother isn't the frail, naive woman she had convinced herself I was. After 67 years on this earth, I've learned that when someone shows you their teeth, the only way to defend yourself is to show them you have claws of your own. That night, sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind was a whirlwind of memories, each one now tainted by the poison of that message. To understand the depth of this wound, you have to understand how I became the woman I am today, and how my relationship with Judith became the sun around which my entire world revolved. I grew up in a home where love was a verb. It was packing my father's lunch before dawn. It was my mother, a seamstress, mending our clothes late into the night, her fingers nimble despite her arthritis. Beatrice, she would tell me, her voice soft but firm. In this life, family is the only thing that's real. And for family, you give everything you have. That lesson was etched onto my soul. When I found myself pregnant with Judith at 19, her father vanished like a ghost in the morning fog. One night, he swore he loved me. The next, his apartment was empty. His parents told me their son wouldn't ruin his future for a teenage mistake. My mother sold her only 2 gold bracelets, heirlooms from her grandmother, to buy a crib and clothes for the baby. When Judith was born, it was like the world had been given a new color. She had my eyes and a smile that could disarm armies. My mother and I were a team. I started cleaning houses at 20, earning barely enough to survive, but every dollar was for her. Every single cent. I remember her first day of school. We walked the 2 miles because we couldn't afford the bus, but her uniform was perfectly pressed and her shoes shined to a mirror finish. Other mothers pulled up in expensive cars, their hands soft and manicured. I would hide my own, calloused and stained with bleach, behind my back. But when Judith threw her arms around my neck and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy. You're the best in the world," I felt richer than any of them. A child's love is a powerful currency. I just never thought mine would expire. The years blurred into a routine of sacrifice. Waking at 4 a.m. to make her breakfast, cleaning 3 houses a day, coming home to help with homework, and falling into bed with aching bones, only to do it all again. Weekends were for laundry jobs to earn extra cash for her school trips, her ballet lessons, her dream of a better life. My mother passed away when Judith was 10, but her last words to me were a promise I would carry like a sacred vow. "Beatrice, that child is your masterpiece. Give her the world. Give her an education. She has good blood in her. Our blood. She won't fail you." Those words became my fuel. When Judith turned 15, I worked 7 days a week for 6 months to pay for the party she wanted. I spent $4,000, money I had painstakingly saved to fix the leaky roof, on a golden dress and a catered celebration. Seeing her shine that night, so happy and beautiful, felt priceless. "Mom, I don't know how you do it," she'd said, hugging me tight. "When I grow up, I'm going to give all of this back to you, times 1,000. Times 1,000. I replayed her words, her laughter from the message echoing in the silence. The betrayal wasn't just about the house or the money. It was the complete erasure of every sacrifice, every bleached raw hand, every sleepless night. It was the horrifying realization that in my daughter's eyes, I wasn't her mother anymore. I was just an obstacle, an old, bitter obstacle on her path to a life of peace. But Judith had forgotten one crucial detail. She had forgotten who taught her to be smart, who taught her to be strategic. She had my blood in her, all right, and she was about to find out just how formidable a woman with nothing left to lose could be. Before the whispers, there were smiles. A year after Judith married Walter, they were the perfect couple. He was a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, charming, ambitious, and he looked at my daughter like she was the center of the universe. When he first asked for her hand, I wept with joy. I thought Judith would finally have the stable, 2-parent family I could never give her. I paid for her happiness. I just didn't realize I was also funding her greed. Organizing the wedding was another mountain of sacrifice. Judith dreamt of a fairy tale celebration from the pages of a magazine. The venue, the dress, the caterer, it all added up to nearly $15,000. I took out a second mortgage on my house to pay for it. I didn't hesitate. Seeing her walk down that aisle, radiant and full of hope, was worth every penny of debt. For the first few years, they were wonderful. Sunday dinners were a tradition. "Mom, let me help with the bills," Judith would insist, slipping me cash for groceries. "You took care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn." I finally felt it, the culmination of all my hard work. I had a grateful daughter, a loving son-in-law. My mother's promise had come true. But everything shifted 3 years ago when Walter was laid off. The financial strain was like a poison seeping into their marriage. The requests for money started small. A few hundred for a car repair, 1,000 to cover rent, then 2,000 to pay off a credit card. As always, I couldn't say no. A mother doesn't let her child struggle if she can help it. But it was after I loaned them $5,000 to consolidate their debts that the subtle changes began. Looking back now, after hearing that message, I see it wasn't stress that changed them. It was the beginning of a calculated, cruel campaign to push me out of my own life. The first sign was the canceled Sunday dinners. "Oh, Mom, we're swamped. Walter has to put in extra hours at his new job to make a good impression. You know how it is. We need to be responsible." I understood. Or I told myself I did. It was normal for a young couple to be ambitious. But then my calls started going unanswered. I'd call in the morning. "Mom, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back." I'd call in the afternoon. "Mom, I'm stuck in traffic." At night, it was always, "It's late, we're exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow." That tomorrow rarely came. And when it did, our conversations, which used to be filled with laughter and stories, became brief, 5-minute check-ins. It felt like I was talking to a polite but distant stranger. Then came the hurtful comments, cleverly disguised as concern. Mom, Walter and I were talking. We're a little worried about you. He noticed you've been a bit forgetful lately. Are you sure you're okay all alone in that big house? At your age, anything could happen. I laughed it off, but a seed of doubt was planted. Was I getting forgetful? I didn't think so. But Judith was so certain. Maybe she was seeing something I wasn't. Gaslighting isn't an explosion. It's a slow leak, silently poisoning the air you breathe until you can't trust your own mind. One afternoon, I decided to surprise them. I baked Walter's favorite apple pie and drove to their apartment. When I knocked, I could hear laughter inside, but it took them nearly a full minute to open the door. Mom, what a surprise. We were just organizing some paperwork. Inside, her cousin Gloria, the one who worked at the county clerk's office, was hastily shoving a stack of documents into a briefcase on their kitchen table. Hello, Aunt Beatrice, she chirped, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Just helping Judith sort out some of Walter's insurance forms. But I was sure I saw my name, Beatrice Hayes, typed at the top of one of those pages before Gloria snatched it away. My name? Why would you need papers with my name on them for Walter's insurance? Judith and Gloria exchanged a flickering glance, a silent conversation that I now understand perfectly. Oh, it's just to update the emergency contacts and beneficiaries, Mom. You know, you're our only family. If something were to happen to us. Her explanation soothed my worries at the time. It seemed so logical, so responsible. But later, whenever I'd bring it up, Judith would deftly change the subject. Speaking of family, did I tell you what Aunt Susan is up to? She'd say, and the topic of the paperwork would vanish. Then the deliberate forgetfulness started. They would invite me to lunch, and I would arrive at the restaurant to find an empty table. This happened 3 times. The third time, as I sat alone in that bustling restaurant for an hour, feeling like a fool, I started to feel a cold dread. This didn't feel like forgetfulness. It felt like a message. They were teaching me a lesson. The lesson was that I was no longer a priority. I was an inconvenience. They started excluding me from family events. I found out from my neighbor, Mrs. Sinclair, that they'd hosted a large barbecue for Walter's birthday. It's funny you weren't there, Beatrice, she'd said. I saw them buying enough steak for an army. When I confronted Judith, her voice was smooth as silk. Oh, Mom, it was just a casual thing with Walter's work friends. We didn't want to bother you. The final, decisive move came 2 months ago. The straw that I now realize broke the camel's back. Mom, our landlord is fumigating the entire apartment building for termites, and we need a place to stay for about a month. We were hoping, could we stay with you? Besides, Walter added, putting a hand on my shoulder. This way we can spend more time together. Keep an eye on you. It's perfect, don't you think? I was overjoyed. I thought this was the answer to my prayers. We would finally reconnect, and the distance that had grown between us would disappear. I welcomed them with open arms, blind to the fact that I was inviting the enemy through my front door. From the first day, my own house began to feel alien. Walter started complaining about everything. The TV was too old. The internet was too slow. The water pressure in the shower was a trickle. Beatrice, he'd say with a patronizing sigh, this house needs a lot of work. Maintaining such a big property at your age must be exhausting. Judith began rearranging my life without permission. Mom, these old dishes are chipped. I bought us a new set, she'd announce, packing away the plates my mother had given me. And these clothes in your closet are so dated. Let's just donate them and make some space. Slowly, my home stopped feeling like mine. I was a guest, an occupant in a house that was being subtly remade in their image. The hushed conversations started. I'd walk into the kitchen and they would fall silent, immediately changing the subject to something trivial like the weather. What were you two whispering about? I'd ask. Nothing important, Mom, Judith would reply with that bright, fake smile. Just budgeting. One night, I heard Walter on the phone out on the patio. His voice was low. Yeah, we're in. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Gloria says she can have the final papers ready in 2 weeks. When I stepped outside to ask who he was talking to, he quickly hung up. Just my boss about a new project. Sorry for the noise. They began to subtly control my finances. Mom, let me handle the utility bills online, Judith would offer. It's too much for you to worry about. At first, I was grateful. Then I realized she was using it as an excuse to scrutinize my bank statements. Mom, why did you withdraw $200 in cash? She'd ask, her tone accusatory. You don't need to carry that much around. They weren't protecting me. They were monitoring me. Every dollar I spent was a dollar they couldn't have. The most painful part was hearing how they spoke about me when they thought I couldn't hear. One afternoon, I was in the garden, just outside the living room window. I heard Walter on the phone. My mother-in-law is getting to be a real handful. She's so stubborn. Judith laughed in the background and added, "Tell me about it. She forgets things constantly, and then gets angry when we try to help." It was a complete fabrication. But it was the narrative they were building. The narrative of the confused, difficult old woman who needed to be managed. A narrative they were starting to sell to others. My lifelong friend, Mavis, came to visit. In front of her, Judith said, "Oh, Mavis, we worry so much. Mom has been so confused lately. The other day, she put her car keys in the refrigerator. I had never done such a thing. But I saw the look of pity in Mavis's eyes. Oh, Beatrice," she said, patting my hand. "It's a good thing you have Judith and Walter to look after you." In that moment, I felt an anger so deep it was followed by an immense wave of sadness. My own daughter was painting me as incompetent to the people I loved. She was isolating me, turning my own friends against me with her lies. It was a slow, methodical erasure of the person I was. And I, wanting so desperately to believe in the goodness of my only child, let it happen. I let the whispers in my own house convince me that maybe, just maybe, they were right. Maybe I was the one who was losing my mind. For weeks, I had lived in a fog of their creation. But that voice message, that cruel, accidental truth, was like a lightning strike that burned the fog away. I wasn't confused. I wasn't difficult. I was being played. They thought they were 2 weeks away from finalizing their plan. They had no idea I was about to start a plan of my own. And it would all begin in just a few short hours. That night was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry anymore. I just sat there on my kitchen floor, letting the reality of my daughter's betrayal wash over me in waves. Every wave threatened to drown me. I replayed the message a dozen times, each listen a fresh stab to the heart, hoping I had imagined it, hoping it was some cruel prank. But it was her voice. The same voice that had once whispered, "I love you, Mommy," into my ear. Now it was calculating the monetary value of my life and my death. Grief is a strange thing. First, it paralyzes you. Then it changes you. I thought about the specialists they had brought to the house. A geriatric care consultant who asked me patronizing questions about the date and my address while Judith hovered nearby, sighing dramatically. A social worker who evaluated my home's safety risks, pointing out the stairs and the old wiring. I had been listening from the kitchen, perfectly lucid, while that man, paid by my daughter, wrote lies about my mind. It had all been a performance. They weren't doctors and specialists. They were actors in a play designed to have me declared incompetent. They were building a file, a paper trail of my supposed decline, that would justify taking everything from me. Around 3 a.m., the profound sadness began to curdle into something else. Something hot and sharp. Anger. A pure, cold fury I hadn't felt in decades. I looked at her innocent face in the photograph on my mantel. Where did I go wrong? Did I love her too much? Did I sacrifice so much that she came to see my love not as a gift, but as an entitlement? I had raised her to be strong, to be smart. I just never imagined she would turn that strength, that intelligence, against me. My mother's words echoed in my head. She has good blood in her. Our blood. She won't fail you. Oh, Mother. She had failed me, but she had not failed to inherit our blood. And our blood wasn't just about sacrifice. It was about survival. My mother had survived poverty. I had survived abandonment and hardship. We were Hayes women. We were not victims. My daughter had started a war. She just forgot that I was the one who taught her how to fight. The plan began to form in my mind, not as a desperate scramble, but as a calm, clear sequence of moves on a chessboard. They saw me as a pawn, ready to be swept off the board. They were about to discover I was the queen. Step 1. Isolate the enemy's assets. My money. My accounts. Step 2. Neutralize their allies. The cousin. Gloria. The key to their legal maneuvers. Step 3. Go on the offensive. A lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the best. Step 4. The element of surprise. They had to believe until the very last second that their plan was working perfectly. The sky outside was turning from gray to a soft pink. A new day. I walked upstairs, past the closed door of the guest room where my daughter and her husband slept, dreaming of my inheritance. I didn't make a sound. In my bedroom, I opened my closet and pushed past the drab, sensible clothes Judith had encouraged me to wear. At the very back, preserved in a garment bag, was my power suit. A sharp, navy blue pantsuit I had worn only twice before, to my mother's funeral and to Judith's college graduation. It was my armor, the uniform of a woman who was not to be trifled with. I looked at myself in the mirror. The tired, heartbroken woman from last night was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone I hadn't seen in a very long time. She looked strong. She looked dignified. She looked dangerous. Before I left, I found a pen and a notepad. I scribbled a short, simple message and left it on the kitchen table where they would be sure to see it. Judith and Walter, gone out early for some personal appointments. Don't wait up. Love, Mom. The love, Mom, was a final, tactical touch. Let them think everything was normal. Let them believe their loving, oblivious mother was just running errands. They thought I was going to a doctor's appointment. They had no idea I was going to war. I gathered my purse, my checkbook, my ID, and all the important documents I kept in a small fireproof box. My house deed, my birth certificate, my mother's will. I walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. The morning air was cool and crisp. It felt like the first day of a new life. As I walked to my car, I allowed myself a small, cold smile. Judith thought her plan was perfect. But she had made one fatal amateur mistake. She had sent the evidence directly to her victim. And her victim was now the prosecution, the judge, and the jury. The battle for my life, my home, and my dignity had begun. My first stop was the bank. I needed to see just how deep this betrayal went, and I needed to cut off their supply line. My money. Immediately. As I drove, I felt no fear. The woman who had cried on the kitchen floor was a memory. The woman behind the wheel now had a single purpose: justice. Judith and Walter thought they were planning my future in a retirement home. They had no idea I was about to meticulously dismantle theirs. For years, City Central Bank had been a place of hope. It was where I'd opened Judith's first savings account with a crumpled $20 bill. It was where I'd been approved for the mortgage on my home, my hands shaking as I signed the papers. Now, I was walking in to investigate a crime committed by the very person whose future I had built within these walls. I walked into the bank just as it opened. I approached the desk of the branch manager, a woman in her late 40s with a professional but kind face. Good morning. I'd like to speak with the manager. Good morning, I'm Evelyn Price. Of course. Mrs. Hayes, isn't it? It's been a while. How can I help you today? Evelyn had known me for over a decade. She'd helped me set up my retirement account. She'd always asked after Judith. I hated that I had to have this conversation with her, but I had no choice. I had to know. Evelyn, I need your help with a very sensitive matter. I need to review all transactions on my checking and savings accounts for the past year. And I need to understand if anyone besides myself has been accessing my financial information. Evelyn's professional smile tightened slightly. She gestured for me to sit. Of course, Beatrice. Let me just pull up your file. Is there a particular transaction you're concerned about? I'm concerned about all of them. Evelyn typed on her computer. Her brow furrowed as she read the screen. Well, everything seems to be in order. I see the standard automatic bill payments, your pension deposit. Oh, and I see your daughter, Judith, has been making inquiries. It's good you have her helping you out. My blood ran cold. There it was. Confirmation. My daughter? What kind of inquiries? Just general things. Checking balances, verifying transactions. She presented a letter of authorization from you a few months back, giving her permission to help manage your finances. We have it on file. A letter I never wrote. A signature I never signed. The lies were deeper than I imagined. Evelyn, I never signed any such letter. I want to see it. Now. The firmness in my voice surprised even me. Evelyn's eyes widened. She quickly understood this was not a simple inquiry. Without a word, she got up and went to a filing cabinet. She returned with a single sheet of paper and slid it across the desk. There it was. A typed letter, professional and convincing. It spoke of my advancing age and occasional memory lapses, and how my loving daughter would be assisting me to ensure my bills were paid on time. And at the bottom, a signature. Beatrice Hayes. It was a masterful forgery. It was my name in my style of cursive, but the slant was just a little too perfect, the B a little too ornate. It was the signature of someone trying to be me. This is a forgery. I slid my driver's license across the desk. Compare the signatures. Look at the one on the back of my bank card. I have never, in my life, signed my name like this. Evelyn looked from the letter to the ID, her face turning pale as she realized the gravity of the situation. Oh my God. Beatrice, this is incredibly serious. This is bank fraud. I know exactly what it is, Evelyn. And it stops today. First, I want you to immediately revoke any and all authorizations for Judith Mitchell or Walter Mitchell on all of my accounts. Put a security alert on my file. No one accesses anything without me being present in person with 2 forms of ID. Is that clear? Yes, of course. I'm locking the accounts down right now. I am so sorry this happened. It's not your fault. You were manipulated just like I was. Now the transactions. I want a printout of every withdrawal, transfer, and debit card purchase over $100 for the last 6 months. For the next 20 minutes, the printer hummed, spitting out page after page of my financial life. Evelyn highlighted the transactions that weren't my usual bills or groceries. The picture they painted was sickening. There were hundreds of dollars in withdrawals from ATMs near Judith and Walter's apartment. There were online purchases from expensive clothing stores I'd never heard of. A $1,200 charge to a fancy restaurant for what must have been Walter's birthday party, the one I wasn't invited to. Another $800 to a high-end electronics store. They told me they were struggling to pay rent, while they were funding a lifestyle on my life savings. The total was staggering. Over the last 6 months, they had siphoned off nearly $10,000. They were stealing from me, Evelyn, all while telling me they were worried about my finances. The final step was the most painful, but the most necessary. I also need to see the beneficiary information on my life insurance policy. Of course. She clicked a few more times. The sole beneficiary is Judith Mitchell. Judith's words from the message echoed in my head. If something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it wouldn't be so bad. She wasn't just waiting for my house. She was waiting for me to die. I want to change it. Today. Right now. To whom? I thought for a moment. Who deserved what I had spent a lifetime building? The answer was clear. People like me. People who had been forgotten and discarded. The Haven for Seniors Foundation. They help elderly individuals who have been victims of family fraud and abandonment. Evelyn looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and profound respect. She quickly printed out the forms. As I signed my name, my real, authentic signature, on the line, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lifted off my shoulders. It was a declaration of independence. Judith Mitchell would not see 1 more cent of my money. Not in this life or the next. I left the bank an hour later with a thick folder containing copies of the forged letter and the highlighted bank statements. It was my first file of evidence. My next stop was even more crucial. I had to confront the accomplice, the linchpin in their entire scheme. My own niece, Gloria. She had no idea I was coming, and she had no idea that I now had the power to destroy her career and her life. The chess game was continuing, and it was time to take their bishop off the board. 1 down, 2 to go. I had the what and the how much. Now I needed the how. And Gloria was going to give me every last detail, whether she wanted to or not. The county clerk's office. A place of public records of deeds, titles, and legal truths. Gloria had worked here for 15 years, a steady, respectable job. I had been so proud of her. Now I knew she was using this building not to uphold the law, but to break it. She was forging the documents that would render me homeless and legally powerless. I didn't storm in with accusations. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to be the sweet, slightly confused Aunt Beatrice they all believed me to be. At least at first. I walked into the building. It was busy and bureaucratic. I found Gloria's name on a directory and headed to the Land Records Division. I found Gloria at her desk, looking stressed and surrounded by stacks of paper. Gloria, honey. I was in the area for a doctor's appointment and thought I'd pop in and say hello. I hope I'm not interrupting. Gloria looked up, and a flicker of pure panic crossed her face before she masked it with a tight, professional smile. She stood up immediately. Aunt Beatrice. What are you doing here? Judith didn't tell me you were coming. Oh, it was a last-minute thing. You know how these things are. I just wanted to see my favorite niece. I glanced at the papers on her desk. My goodness, you look so busy. All this important work. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she instinctively tried to cover some of the documents on her desk. Bingo. It's always busy, she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. Can I get you some water? That would be lovely, dear. Actually, while you're up, maybe you can help me with something. Judith mentioned you were helping her with some insurance paperwork for me. It's all so confusing for me these days, you know. I gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. I just wanted to understand a bit better what all these forms are for. I laid the bait. A gentle question from a confused old woman. Now to see if she would take it. Oh, that. It's just routine, Aunt Beatrice. Updating beneficiaries, emergency contacts. Standard procedure for the registry. She was reciting a rehearsed line, and her eyes darted around nervously, hoping no one was listening. Gloria. Stop. Gloria froze, her hand halfway to the water cooler. She looked back at me, her fake smile gone, replaced by fear. Let's not pretend anymore. I know what you and Judith have been planning. I know about the scheme to have me declared incompetent. I know about the plan to transfer the deed to my house. And I know you've been using your position here to create fraudulent documents. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I didn't play the audio. I just let her see the file on the screen, labeled voice message from Judith. She sent it to me by accident, Gloria. I have everything. Every last word. The color drained from Gloria's face. She collapsed back into her chair as if her legs had given out. She looked around her office, at her colleagues, at the life she was about to lose. Aunt Beatrice, please. Don't. I didn't want to. Judith, she pressured me. She told me you weren't well, that you were becoming a danger to yourself. She said it was for your own good, to protect you and your assets. Was it for my own good when you helped her forge my signature on a bank authorization letter? Was it for my own good when you coached her on how to find a corrupt doctor to write a fake dementia diagnosis? Don't you dare pretend this was about my well-being. This was about money, Gloria. It was about a house. She promised me $5,000 once the house was sold. My husband lost his job. We're about to lose our car. I was desperate. Desperation makes people do terrible things. But it doesn't give them a free pass for betrayal. Your financial problems do not give you the right to ruin my life. Now you have two options. I leaned forward, making sure she understood every word. Option 1, you go down with them. I walk out of here right now, go directly to your supervisor, play this recording, show him the evidence from the bank, and file a police report. You will not only lose this job, Gloria, you will be prosecuted. You will go to jail. I paused, letting the reality of that sink in. Or there's option 2. You help me. You give me copies of every single fraudulent document you have created or are in the process of creating. You write down a full, signed confession detailing Judith and Walter's entire plan from the very beginning. You help me undo the damage you have done. If you do that, I will not press criminal charges against you. You'll still lose your job when this is over, but you will stay out of prison. She looked at me, her eyes wide with terror and a flicker of something else, relief. I had given her a way out. A terrible one, but a way out nonetheless. Okay. Yes. Anything. Please. I have 3 kids, Aunt Beatrice. I can't go to jail. For the next hour, my niece became my star witness. She confessed everything. How they had practiced forging my signature for weeks. How they'd found a semi-retired doctor willing to write a fake diagnosis for cash. How they had already drafted the property transfer documents, just waiting for the final incompetency ruling from a judge she knew was sympathetic to these cases. She made copies of everything. The falsified medical opinion letters, the drafted property deeds, email exchanges between her and Judith discussing the plan. She then sat down at her computer and, with trembling hands, typed out a 3-page confession, detailing every step, every date, every crime. She printed it and signed it at the bottom. I now had a second, even thicker, folder of evidence. It was a complete blueprint of their conspiracy. As I stood up to leave, I looked down at my niece, who was now just a broken, sobbing woman. Find a new job, Gloria. And find a moral compass. Because the next time you get involved in something like this, the person you betray might not be as merciful as I am. I walked out of the county administration building and into the bright afternoon sun. I felt no triumph, only a grim sense of accomplishment. I had neutralized their accomplice and secured the proof I needed. My next stop was my final one for the day. It was time to hire a general. It was time to see a lawyer. I knew I couldn't fight this war alone. I needed a legal shark, someone who would take this mountain of evidence and turn it into an unbreakable legal case that would not only protect my rights, but ensure that Judith and Walter faced the full consequences of their actions. The foundation was laid. The evidence was secured. Now, it was time to build the weapon that would bring them down. After leaving Gloria's office, I didn't go home. I couldn't. My house was still their territory. Instead, I went to a quiet cafe, ordered a cup of tea I barely touched, and spent 2 hours researching. I wasn't looking for a cheap family lawyer. I was looking for a killer. I found Sterling Monroe. His firm specialized in financial fraud and elder abuse litigation. His website was filled with testimonials from people just like me, people whose families had tried to erase them for profit. His reputation was that of a brilliant strategist who was both compassionate with his clients and ruthless with his opponents. He was exactly what I needed. I was sitting in the elegant, modern waiting room of Monroe and Associates. The walls were glass, overlooking the city. I clutched my 2 thick evidence folders. A door opened and a sharp, impeccably dressed man in his 40s with intelligent, focused eyes extended his hand. "Mrs. Hayes?" "Sterling Monroe. Please come in." His office was neat and organized, a reflection of a precise mind. There was no pretense, no small talk. He gestured to a chair, and his expression was one of calm, professional focus. "My assistant said your situation was urgent and highly sensitive. Please, tell me everything from the beginning." And so I did. For the next hour, I laid out the entire story. The happy family, the financial troubles, the subtle gaslighting, the canceled lunches, the concerned comments. And then the voice message. I played it for him right there in his office. I watched his professional composure remain steady, but I saw a flicker of disgust in his eyes as he listened to Judith's casual cruelty. When the message ended, I pushed the 2 folders across his mahogany desk. "This," I said, tapping the first folder, "is from the bank. The forged authorization letter and 6 months of fraudulent transactions. And this," I tapped the second, "is from my niece at the county clerk's office. Copies of the falsified medical reports, the drafted property transfer documents, and her full, signed confession detailing the entire conspiracy." Sterling Monroe opened the folders. He read through the documents in silence, his sharp eyes missing nothing. He compared the forged signature to my real one. He scanned Gloria's tear-stained confession. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he looked up at me, and for the first time, his professional mask slipped into a look of genuine admiration. "Mrs. Hayes, Beatrice, in 20 years of practicing law, I have rarely had a client walk in with a case this complete. What you have done in the last 24 hours is nothing short of extraordinary. You have single-handedly built the foundation for an ironclad legal case. To be seen, to be validated after months of being made to feel invisible and incompetent, it felt like the first breath of fresh air after being underwater for too long. So you'll take the case? Take the case? Beatrice, I would be honored to represent you. What they have done constitutes multiple felonies: bank fraud, conspiracy to commit property fraud, forgery, and potentially attempted elder abuse. We have more than enough to put them both in prison for a very long time." Prison. The word hung in the air. Could I really send my own daughter to prison? What are my options, Sterling? What do you recommend? We have 2 main paths, which we can pursue simultaneously. The first is criminal. We take this evidence to the district attorney's office. They will press charges. Given the strength of your evidence, especially the confession from the cousin, convictions are highly likely. He paused, letting me absorb that. The second path is civil. We file a lawsuit against Judith, Walter, and Gloria for damages. We sue for the money they stole, for emotional distress, for legal fees, and for punitive damages to punish them for their malicious actions. We can also get an immediate restraining order and an injunction to prevent them from selling or transferring any of your assets, and to get them out of your house. Get them out of my house. The thought was so simple, yet so powerful. I want justice. But more than that, I want them to learn that actions have consequences. For my entire life, I have been too good, too forgiving. It's time for me to defend myself. Then I suggest we do both. We'll prepare the civil lawsuit first, as that gives us more control. The threat of criminal charges will be our leverage. Here is my proposed strategy. For the next hour, Sterling Monroe laid out a brilliant multi-step plan that was designed not just to win, but to reclaim my power and my narrative. First, he would have a process server deliver an immediate eviction notice to Judith and Walter, giving them 24 hours to vacate my property. It would be delivered along with the civil lawsuit, so they would understand the full scope of what was happening. Second, he would file for an emergency court order to freeze their bank accounts, preventing them from hiding the money they had stolen from me. Third, the centerpiece of the plan. He wouldn't just send the papers. He wanted a confrontation. A controlled, legal confrontation on my home turf. They believe they are in control. We need to shatter that illusion in the most dramatic and undeniable way possible. Here's what we'll do. We give them the eviction notice tomorrow morning. Then, the following day, I will arrive at your house with a public notary and 2 police officers as civil standbys to ensure there is no breach of peace. There, in your living room, we will confront them with every piece of evidence. We will present them with our demands. We will give them one chance, and one chance only, to avoid immediate criminal charges. It wasn't just a legal strategy. It was theater. A final act in a play they thought they were directing. And what will you demand? Full repayment of the stolen funds plus damages. A signed legal document relinquishing any and all future claims to your estate. And a full, public retraction and apology for the lies they have spread about your mental state. If they agree, we can consider keeping the criminal charges in abeyance. If they refuse, the officers will be right there to escort them away. It was perfect. It was decisive. It was final. It gave them a choice, but it also guaranteed justice. I left Sterling Monroe's office late that afternoon feeling a sense of power I had never known. I was no longer a lone woman fighting in the dark. I had an army behind me. I spent that night in a hotel, the first peaceful night's sleep I'd had in months. I knew Judith and Walter would be at my house, oblivious, probably celebrating their impending victory. They had no idea that in less than 24 hours, their world was going to be systematically and legally dismantled. The sword of justice had been forged, and it was about to fall. The next morning, a process server walked up to the front door of my house and rang the doorbell. Judith answered, a confused look on her face. He handed her a thick legal envelope. Judith Mitchell, you've been served. The board has been set, the pieces are in motion. After discovering my daughter's plot, I gathered my evidence, secured my assets, and hired a legal powerhouse. Yesterday, Judith and Walter were served with a lawsuit and an eviction notice. They have had 24 hours to live with the knowledge that I know everything. Today, the confrontation they never thought would happen is here. We are returning to my house, and we are not leaving until justice is served. A car pulled up in front of my house. Sterling Monroe got out of the driver's side. I got out of the passenger side. I was wearing my navy blue power suit. Behind us, a police car pulled up, and 2 uniformed officers got out. A final car arrived with a public notary. Walking up my own garden path felt different today. It wasn't a path to a prison anymore. It was a path to a courtroom. My courtroom. Sterling had prepped me for this. Stay calm, Beatrice. Let me do the talking. You are the injured party, the seat of power. Let them see your strength, not your anger. My heart was hammering, but on the outside, I was a statue of composure. Sterling Monroe rang the doorbell. After a long moment, the door opened. Walter stood there. His usual charming demeanor was gone, replaced by a sullen, defiant glare. Behind him, Judith stood, her face pale and tear-streaked. What is this? You can't just kick us out. We have rights. Actually, you don't. You are not tenants, you were guests, and your invitation has been rescinded. We are here with a civil standby to ensure you vacate the premises peacefully. But first, Mrs. Hayes has graciously allowed us one final conversation to resolve this matter before it escalates to a criminal level. May we come in? Walter hesitated, but seeing the police officers, he stepped aside. The group entered the living room, my living room. Judith refused to look at her mother. The air was thick with tension. They had already started packing some boxes, a clear sign they knew the game was up. I sat in my favorite armchair. The one they had often complained was old and shabby. Today, it felt like a throne. Mom, how could you? Bringing the police, lawyers, after everything we've done for you. The audacity. To the very end, she was determined to play the victim. Let's be very clear about what you've done for me, Judith. Sterling Monroe stepped forward and placed his briefcase on the coffee table. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell. My name is Sterling Monroe, and I represent your mother. We are here today to present you with irrefutable evidence of your conspiracy against her and to offer you one chance to mitigate the severe legal consequences you are facing. He opened his briefcase, and the theatrical presentation began. Let's begin with the matter of fraud. He laid out the forged bank authorization letter next to my driver's license. Exhibit A, a forgery, expertly done but a forgery nonetheless, which you used to gain illegal access to your mother's accounts. That's ridiculous. Beatrice asked us to help her. She's been getting so forgetful. a claim you've been making for months. Which brings us to Exhibit B. He then laid out the highlighted bank statements. Nearly $10,000 siphoned from your forgetful mother's accounts over 6 months. For what, exactly? This $1,200 charge at the Oak Room Steakhouse. Was that for her benefit? Or this $800 from tech giant for a new laptop? Those were household expenses. We were buying things for the house. For her. The lies were so desperate, so flimsy. Really, Judith? Did you buy me the new dress from that online boutique? Did you buy me the plane tickets to that resort in Mexico I see here? I was paying for all the household bills from my pension. This money, this was for you. And you stole it. Which brings us to your accomplice. He pulled out Gloria's signed confession. Exhibit C, a full confession from your cousin Gloria, detailing the entire plan. How you pressured her, how you planned to forge documents to steal this very house. Judith's eyes widened in horror and betrayal as she saw Gloria's signature at the bottom. Gloria. She's lying. She's trying to save herself. Is she, dear? I took out my small recorder, which I had used in Gloria's office. Because I also have a recording of our conversation. Would you like to hear her confess in her own words? Silence. Judith and Walter looked at each other, the last of their defiance crumbling. They were trapped. And finally, the cornerstone of your plan. He laid out the faked medical reports. Exhibit D, fraudulent medical opinions stating Mrs. Hayes has cognitive decline, which you intended to use to have her declared legally incompetent. He then produced a new, official-looking document. This, however, is a full psychological evaluation of your mother conducted yesterday by Dr. Alastair Cromwell, the head of geriatrics at University Hospital. It concludes that she is, and I quote, in perfect mental health, with cognitive functions superior to the average for her age group. Proving your documents are malicious fabrications. Judith finally broke. She sank onto the sofa and began to sob hysterically. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. We were desperate. We had so many debts. We didn't know what else to do. This is a nightmare. It all got out of control. I stood up, my voice no longer angry, just filled with a profound, weary sadness. No, Walter. It wasn't out of control. It was a plan. A cold, calculated plan to dispose of me. Desperation doesn't make you plot to steal from the person who gave you life. Greed does. I took out my phone. And desperation doesn't make you say this. I played the final, damning part of the voice message. Judith's voice filled the room. If something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it wouldn't be so bad. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the police officers looked disgusted. Walter stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. The final nail was in the coffin. So, here are your options. Sterling's voice was sharp and final. You will sign this agreement. It stipulates that you will repay the $9,850 you stole within 90 days. You will pay an additional $20,000 in damages for emotional distress. You will relinquish all present and future claims to Mrs. Hayes' estate. And you will sign a public statement, to be notarized right now, admitting that your claims about her mental health were false and malicious lies. You will do all of this, and you will vacate this house within the hour. He paused, looking at the two officers. If you refuse to sign, I will make one phone call to the district attorney. These officers will take your official statements, and you will be arrested and charged with multiple felonies. The choice is yours. Judith, sobbing, reached for the pen. Walter, defeated, did the same. The notary stepped forward. For the next 15 minutes, they signed away the rights to the future they had tried to steal. Watching them sign the papers wasn't a victory. It was a funeral. The funeral for the daughter I thought I had. The funeral for the family I thought we were. It was painful, but it was necessary. After they signed the last page, the police officers escorted them upstairs to collect their remaining personal belongings. I stood in my living room, the house silent for the first time in months. I had won. I had taken back my home. I had taken back my life. But I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this war wasn't truly over. People like Judith and Walter don't accept defeat gracefully. They retaliate. And their next attack wouldn't be with forged papers, but with poison and lies. The first few days after they left were blissfully silent. The oppressive tension that had filled my home for months was gone. I could breathe again. I changed the locks, had a security system installed, and slowly began to purge their presence from my house. I packed away the new, sterile dishes Judith had bought and brought my mother's old, chipped plates back out. My house started to feel like my own again. But that peace was short-lived. The first attack wasn't a physical threat. It was an assault on my name, my reputation, and my sanity, waged on the modern battlefield of social media. A post appeared on our community Facebook page from a fake profile, but with a picture of Judith. Community alert. Please keep an eye out for my elderly mother, Beatrice Hayes. She suffers from severe dementia and has recently become very paranoid, making false accusations against her own family. We are deeply concerned for her well-being. If you see her looking confused or alone, please contact us immediately. She should not be unsupervised. The post included photos of me they had taken over the past few months. A picture of me sleeping in my armchair, another of me looking distracted in the garden. They were innocent moments, now twisted to look like proof of my incompetence. The comments poured in from well-meaning, clueless strangers. Oh, that poor woman. Praying for your family. How sad. It's so hard when they lose their minds. Thank you for looking out for her. It's good she has children who care. They had signed a paper admitting I was sane, but they were determined to prove to the world that I was not. My neighbor, Mrs. Sinclair, came over, her face etched with worry, holding her tablet. Beatrice, dear, are you all right? I saw this awful post online. I had to sit her down and explain the entire sordid story, showing her my copy of the notarized confession they had signed. She was horrified, but I knew she was just one person. How many others in my small town now saw me as the crazy old woman from the Facebook post? The harassment escalated. The phone calls started. They came at all hours from blocked numbers. I would be jolted awake by my phone ringing at 3 a.m. You're a monster. What kind of mother destroys her own children's lives? You'll die alone, you miserable old hag. Night after night, the calls came. Sometimes it was just silence. Sometimes it was insults. Sometimes it was heavy breathing. I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers, turning my own phone into another source of anxiety. Then, the anonymous letters began arriving in my mailbox. They weren't threatening violence. They were engineered for maximum psychological damage. One read, "You worked your fingers to the bone your whole life, and for what? To raise a daughter who despises you. You must have been a terrible mother. This is what you deserve." Another one said, "Your own family can't stand you because you're an insufferable, bitter old woman. No one will even notice when you're gone." Every word was a carefully chosen poison dart, aimed at my deepest insecurities as a mother and a woman. One night, reading a particularly cruel letter that accused me of driving my husband away decades ago, I finally broke. I crumpled the paper in my fist and slid down to the kitchen floor, in the exact spot where I had first heard the voice message. I sobbed, not for the betrayal, but for the sheer exhaustion of the fight. What did I do wrong? The question haunted me. Was I a bad mother? Did I create this monster? For a fleeting, desperate moment, I considered giving up. Maybe I should call Sterling Monroe, drop the settlement, tell them they could have the money back if they would just leave me in peace. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem. Just as I was sinking into that dark spiral of self-doubt, I remembered something. My mother's last letter to me. I got up, went to my bedroom, and pulled out an old wooden chest. I retrieved a yellowed envelope and read my mother's words again. "My dearest Beatrice, if you are reading this, I am gone. But my love for you is not. I am so proud of the woman you are. But if anyone, and I mean anyone, ever tries to take advantage of your good heart or trample on your dignity, you must remember that you are a Hayes woman. You are stronger than you think. True love never seeks to destroy. It never seeks to humiliate." The last lines were what I needed to hear. You deserve respect. You deserve peace. If someone cannot give you that, they do not deserve a place in your life, no matter how much blood you share. I closed my eyes, clutching the letter to my chest. A new wave of determination washed over me. My mother was right. This wasn't love. It wasn't family. It was abuse. And the only way to deal with abuse is to cut it out completely. The next day, I called Sterling Monroe, not to surrender, but to re-strategize. "Sterling, their harassment campaign is escalating. What can we do?" "This is predictable, Beatrice. It's called witness intimidation and defamation. And it's illegal. Document everything. The calls, the letters, the posts. We will add this to our file. But I think it's time we stop playing defense and launch a counteroffensive. A perfectly legal one. What do you have in mind?" During my firm's discovery process, we pulled their financial records to verify the stolen funds. My paralegal noticed something interesting. They've been living a lifestyle far beyond their declared income for the last 3 years. I suspect they have not been entirely honest with the IRS. It was my turn to find a loophole. A perfectly legal, devastatingly effective one. As a concerned citizen, Sterling, I believe it is my civic duty to report any potential tax evasion I become aware of. A week later, Sterling Monroe's office submitted a detailed, anonymous tip to the Internal Revenue Service, complete with bank statements showing expenditures that far outstripped their reported salaries. My second act of legal revenge was social. I took the notarized confession they had signed and, with Sterling's help, drafted a calm, factual statement of my own. I posted it on the same community Facebook page where they had defamed me. To my friends and neighbors, many of you have seen distressing posts about my mental health. For my own peace of mind, I am sharing the truth. Attached is a notarized legal document in which my daughter and son-in-law admit their claims were false, part of a plan to defraud me of my property. The matter is now settled. I thank you for your concern and ask only for peace and privacy as I move on with my life. The effect was immediate and explosive. The community's sympathy swung entirely in my favor. The narrative they had tried to control was shattered by the simple, undeniable truth. The consequences for Judith and Walter began to cascade. The IRS audit was a financial catastrophe for them. They were found to owe over $30,000 in back taxes and penalties. Their friends and family, seeing the public confession, turned on them. Walter was passed over for a major promotion at work. Judith became a pariah in her social circles. They had tried to burn my life to the ground. Instead, they had only set their own on fire. With the legal agreement signed and my reputation restored, I realized one final thing had to be done. I had to leave. The house was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, haunted by the ghosts of what had happened. Every corner held a memory of their whispers, their lies. To truly be free, I had to let it go. My lawyer, Sterling Monroe, handled the final details of my will. Are you certain about this, Beatrice? Your entire estate, including the proceeds from the house, is nearly $500,000. I've never been more certain, Sterling. All of it is to be donated to the Haven for Seniors Foundation. Let my life's work help people who truly need it, not an ungrateful child who only saw me as a dollar sign. My daughter wanted my legacy. Now, my legacy would be to help protect others from daughters like her. Selling the house was liberating. With the proceeds, I bought a beautiful, smaller apartment in a vibrant residential complex for active seniors. It had gardens, a swimming pool, and a community of people my own age who valued respect and independence. My most satisfying act of closure, however, was quiet and personal. The IRS audit had financially crippled Judith and Walter. I heard through the grapevine they had to sell their car and move to a smaller rental apartment across town. Their greed had cost them everything they were trying to gain. In my new life, I blossomed. Freed from the weight of their judgment, I rediscovered the woman I was before I became just Judith's mother. I joined a painting class and found a talent I never knew I had. I started taking dance lessons, my 67-year-old bones protesting at first, but my spirit soaring. I began volunteering 3 days a week at the very foundation that would one day be my beneficiary. I sat with men and women whose stories mirrored my own. I listened to their pain, but more importantly, I shared my story of fighting back. An elderly man at the foundation once told me, "Mrs. Hayes, you give us hope. You show us that it's not over." I had found a new purpose. My pain was no longer just a wound. It was a beacon for others lost in the same darkness. About 6 months after I moved, I ran into Judith. It was in the aisle of a grocery store. She looked haggard and much older than her years. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a weary resignation. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom," she said, her voice a broken whisper. "Please forgive me. We've paid the price. We've lost everything. Our credit is ruined. Walter lost his promotion. Isn't that enough punishment?" I looked at the daughter I had raised, the woman who had planned my social and financial execution, and I felt nothing. Not hatred. Not anger. Just a quiet, sad finality. "I didn't punish you, Judith. The consequences of your own actions did. You chose to build your future on a foundation of lies. I just chose to defend my present on a foundation of truth. But we're family," she pleaded, a desperate final attempt. "You can't just abandon your only daughter. Family is a bond built on love and respect, not just blood. For 35 years, I was your unconditional mother. For the last several years, you were my calculating adversary. You cannot ask me to forget that just because your plan failed. So you'll never forgive me? I already have, Judith, I told her, and I meant it. Forgiving you was for me, not for you. It was the only way to get the poison out of my own heart. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It does not mean I will ever trust you again. It does not mean you get a key to my new home. I wished her well in her life, and I walked away. I walked away from the drama, from the toxicity, from the daughter I had lost long before I ever heard that voice message. I walked away toward my new life, my new friends, my new peace. I am on the balcony of my new apartment now, painting a vibrant sunrise. I am smiling, genuinely happy. My phone rings. It's my friend, Mrs. Sinclair. Beatrice, are you ready? Our dance class starts in an hour, and I'm not letting you be late. I'll be right there, dear. These old bones still have a lot of dancing left in them. I put down my paintbrush, look at my reflection in the glass of the balcony door, and see a happy, strong, and finally free woman looking back at me. I started this story as a victim. But my story is not about betrayal. It's about resilience. It's about learning that it is never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to choose your own peace over toxic family ties. It is never too late to build a new beginning from the ashes of your old life. And it is never, ever too late to be free. Which part of this story resonated with you the most? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If this story has touched you, please support the channel by hitting that like button. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for your incredible support. See you in the next story.